Okay, so next up is Johanna Brinne Roos. She's a data scientist at the Center for Innovation at Karolinska University Hospital. So welcome on stage, Johanna. Give a warm welcome. So Johanna has spent her time doing health economic modeling and predictive modeling, and in the recent years used large volumes of patient data to investigate the benefits of new care methods. So we're looking forward to hearing your presentation.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for having me as a speaker. So my name is Johanna, and I work as a data scientist at the Center for Innovation at Karolinska University Hospital. The Center for Innovation brings together industry, academia, and the hospital to find the most innovative solutions for healthcare. So if you have any great ideas, please come to us. I call myself a data scientist, but my background is in physics. I used to develop algorithms to study quantum dynamics in chemical reactions. I still develop algorithms to study dynamics in chemical reactions, because if you think of it, a disease could be the onset of a chemical reaction inside your body, or a result of a chemical reaction inside your body. So I use my previous knowledge daily in my current work, and that is great fun. At the Center for Innovation, I perform health economic evaluations to evaluate the projects that we are working on. Health economic evaluation is the comparative analysis of alternative courses of action in terms of both their cost and consequences in order to assist policy decision, as Raman also neatly put it. So suppose you have an old care method A and a new care method B. Then the comparative analysis is the difference between B and A, both when it comes to cost and consequences effects. Now, the performance measures could be, for example, life expectancy, quality of life, number of acute visits, or number of complications. Health economic evaluation is about not choosing the cheapest. Instead, we look at the cost effectiveness. Cost effectiveness is simplest. You can see that in the cost effectiveness plane here, where you have the difference in effect on the x-axis and the difference in cost on the y-axis. This was difficult. And in this quadrant here, the fourth quadrant, the new solutions B is both cheaper and better than A. So of course we should choose that solution before A. If the results end up in this quadrant, then B is more expensive and worse than A. Then of course we should choose the other solution. If the results end up in the first quadrant here, below the willingness to pay threshold, then we have a cost-effective solution. The willingness to pay threshold depends on the severity of the disease and is increasing with the severity of the disease. You also have cost effectiveness if you end up in the third quadrant here. But that's a gray zone because we need to think about the patient first, right? To study cost effectiveness and perform health economic evaluation, I've created a Markov model for a care flow at Karolinska University Hospital. The model consists of 7 states. You can be before the care chain, here. You can be inside the care chain, or you can be deceased or dead. Now, inside the care chain is split up into 5 other states. Those states correspond to the different visits you can have in Karolinska University Hospital. You can come on an acute visit and stay overnight. That's acute inpatient visit or acute inpatient care. You can come on acute visit and not stay overnight, then it's acute outpatient care. And you can come on a planned visit and stayed overnight, and it's planned inpatient care. And you can come on a planned visit and not stay overnight, and it's planned outpatient care. Or you can be in between care events at home or elsewhere. Now, each state in this inside care chain is associated with a cost distribution, quality of life distribution, and the mortality distribution that is specific for the disease that is being studied. And these distributions are determined by analyzing large amount of data from the hospital. And observe that this model is not constructed in order to follow a particular disease. Instead, it's constructed in order to follow how we move through the system with a particular disease. And as such, it can be used for any disease. It's scalable. So new care method means that you will move differently through this system. And when you do that, the total cost, the total quality of life, or the total life expectancy will differ from the old solution. And then you can do a comparative analysis. The mathematics behind this model is a transition matrix, where you have the probability of staying in a state as the diagonal elements. And the probability of leaving the state and go to another state is the off-diagonal elements of this matrix. Now, the time evolution of the distribution you get by iteration. You multiply the current distribution with this transition matrix. And then you get the next day distribution, state distribution, and then you multiply that distribution with this transition matrix, and you will have what the distribution would look like the day after. An assumption that is used far too often is that those transition elements is treated as constants, and they are actually not. They are dependent on several other parameters such as age, gender, age as onset of the disease, year, month, weekday, and so on. So these are time-dependent functions, in fact. And when you take that into account, this last one, equal sign here, you should put a cross over that one. You should just use the iterative formula, because it's not a matrix you're dealing with. It is a cube. So at each point in time, you would take out a slice of this cube and operate with that slide onto the current state to get the state, the next state. To be able to populate a model like this, you need a lot of data. And we have that. This is an application example from Canada, which is the Karolinska University Hospital database. We have data for 32,720 patients diagnosed with heart failure that I extracted from Canada during the period of 2005 to 2017. In total, these patients had 1,680,593 care events registered at Karolinska Hospital during this period. Now, for each care event, there are admission and dismission time registered, where the patient has been, type of care, age, gender, total cost, diagnosis codes, and more. So how well does the model perform in comparison with the actual data when I populated the model with this kind of data? This is the Canada data versus model for inpatient care. You have acute inpatient care here and planned inpatient care. On the x-axis, you have the date. And on the y-axis, you have the number of patients that each day are in the different state. So you can see that the time-dependent model actually follows the actual data very nicely, both on the long-term time scale and on the short-term time scale. And the same holds for outpatient care, for acute outpatient care, and planned outpatient care on long-term time scale and short-term time scale. So when I know the movement pattern for these patients, I could use it to predict the outcome with the current care methods. That is, if we don't do anything at all, if we continue to work in the same way as we do now. What will happen to the 14,218 patients that were alive of this patient group in August 2017? A constraint of this, a very useful constraint here, is that the sum of being in any state at every point in time should be 32,720 patients. And that is useful when I come to not overtraining the function describing transition elements of the matrix. So here you can see if I go follow the current path, you can see the number of patients that will, that have died over time, and the number of patients that will be in between care events over time, and the number of patients that are inside the hospital in some care state. So I can see that on the current path, this patient will have in total 119,161 life years for this patient group. That's actually the area here between this one and that one. So you can also predict what will happen if we change our care methods, because a new care method is the same as a change in the transition matrix. So the strategy is to create a transition matrix for the current care method, and then create a transition matrix describing a hypothetical alternative care method, and then analyze the difference in outcomes between the different care methods, and then repeat 2 and 3 to optimize. Or you can do experiments. What will happen if the patient in acute inpatient care are allowed to stay on average 1 day longer? Well, then this patient group would have 73 life year gained. Not so much. What will happen if 50% of the patients who are discharged from the emergency room will return to planned outpatient care the next day? In that case, we will have 304 life year gained for this patient group. We can also investigate what will happen if we scale up a solution. HDA is a new daycare facility for heart failure patients that was started by innovators at Karolinska University Hospital in 2015. It was shown to decrease the readmission rate, give calmer working environment for staff, fewer acute visits, and 80% of the patients experienced the care excellent or very good. And 532 patients had been in contact with HDA in August 2017. So if we do a third experiment, the HDA experiment, what will happen if we follow up on all patients in a structured way as HDA does? Well, in that case, we will have 9,582 life years gained for this patient group. That is a 8% increase in life expectancy for a patient group with a very severe illness. It's a huge change. But Markov models also have additional usage. A performance measure that is commonly used in healthcare is acute readmission rate within a X number of days. So normally you develop prediction models for acute readmission within 3 days or 7 days or 30 days or 3 months and 6 months and 1 year. But why? Why do that when you can use those Markov models to calculate the acute readmission in days within any point in time. The way you do it is that you identify the states corresponds to acute states in the transition matrix. And then you replace the rows corresponding to those states with corresponding rows of an identity matrix. You will then not allow any flux out of these states. So when you multiply the initial state, being the state in between care events, with this new transition matrix, x time, and then sum up over the final state of the acute states, you will get the probability of acute readmission. And then you can calculate it for any point in time. That's better, I think. Oh, here was the acute and then care in between states. Let's go for the health economic part. Markov models for health and profit. I did a health economic evaluation of the HDA in 2017. I used the time horizon 1 year. And here I've used the performance measured life day, expected life days for this patient group. And then you have the difference in life days between the two groups, two methods on the x-axis here, and then different in cost on the y-axis. Then you can see that each point here in the cost effectiveness plane corresponds to a patient or a small patient group actually. And 80% of the distribution is on the right-hand side of the y-axis. That is that we could have 80% increased life expectancy with this method. But this is a very severe illness, so quality of life is often more important for these people than life expectancy. So what if we focus on a scenario that takes into account quality of life instead? I have used the performance measure estimated QALY here. QALY stands for quality adjusted life years. And why is it estimated? Well, I didn't have quality of life in my data, but I had the number of diagnosis codes the patient had, what kind of diagnosis codes. I have the age and the gender of the patient at any visit. And then there is this published regression model where you can use to calculate the quality of life for this patient group. So at present, the solution costs 10 million Swedish crowns per year for these 532 patients, if this entire population receives the same treatment. But then I can see that, okay, those patients here, they benefit from this group, this new treatment. And this patient doesn't, not. So if I give the old solution to the patients in the second quadrant, there will be no difference for them. So by focusing treatment on those who get a positive development of QALY, it is also possible to achieve economical savings. So we can go from a cost increase of 10 million Swedish crown for 532 patients for a year, compared to common care, to a cost saving of 24 million Swedish crowns by using this method. But then you, of course, you need to identify the patients that will end up in the fourth quadrant. And then you can do prediction models, but you can also use the Markov model in reverse, perform reverse engineering, because the model is every parameter in the model is a function of parameters such as age, gender, age at onset of the disease, and so on. So then I can see that here you have the female distribution and the male distribution of these 532 patients. And the yellow parts are those that benefit from this new method. So half of the women For half of the women, HD was the better option, and for a quarter of the men, HD was the better option. And for men over 70 years, there seemed to be no positive effect of the HD. So if I identify those and start working like this, I will actually push care in the right direction. So in summary, Markov models for fun. Well, we could predict the outcome if we change our care methods, and we could optimize the care flow and guide hospital care in the right direction. And we could use them for several different purposes. And Markov models for profit, the care flow algorithm as a decision support enables identification of patients benefiting from a particular care method. And it could also make care profitable for the entire patient group and healthcare provider. I would like to add a point here, which I realized when I went through my presentation, is the pedagogical value of Markov models, because these kind of models give a solution at every point in time for a process, from A to Z. So it gives a possibility for you to learn about the process in a very nice way. And when you have learned about the process, you can also know at what point in time should I stop and do differently, not to end up in a state where decreased quality of life and decreased mortality. Thank you.
Thank you, Evelina, so much. So, questions again?
Yes.
I'm seeing. Yeah, we have a question up here.
Thank you. So, how can you apply this model? Do you think you can apply this model as a data scientist working for Candy Crush?
Well, I'm not sure.
Because, like you said, you can have so sometimes you just you start here, you start at A, you end up in Z, and you have no idea what happened in the black box. But you have figured out what to.
At what time point I should do differently, yes.
I might have a business idea here, so thank you.
Okay.
Very good, thank you.
Any other questions? We have one over here.
Hey, thank you for the talk. What type of analysis can you use together with the Markov decision when it comes to counterfactual and causal analysis? So you've analyzed some of how it would be performing in cost and efficiency in different groups, but can you also derive causal interpretations, or could you, now that you're thinking of applying the different care for different groups, then how will you deal with the counterfactual of not being able to know where what it would be if they would have the other alternative treatment?
I could only consider effects that I've built into the model. So if I built in those kind of things, I could maybe look at that as well. Yes. Yes.
It's from the kind of the change perspective, how challenging it is to get this kind of new thinking and new way of handling data to the healthcare sector or at Karolinska. How do you feel? I know your innovation lab and I know some people who are working there, but I was just wondering how do you work with kind of getting people to use these new ways of predicting and so on?
That's a struggle. Yeah, because it's for idea to implementation, you have a very long way. And you have barriers on the way, which is the security and the regulatory issues, and then you have procurement issues and so on. So before you can get anything implemented, you have to go through a very long process, and that's frustrating. Yes. And trying.
But those are kind of structural challenges. Would you say that you have a buy-in from people that don't understand necessarily, like data modeling and advanced analytics?
Yeah, I could struggle with that from time to time as well, yes.
I think many people in here can relate to that.
Yeah.
Yes. So do we have a final question, maybe? Well, then we give a big applause to Johanna. Thank you so much.